Welcome to episode 702 of the Entertainment 2.0 podcast, brought to you by thedigitalmediazone.com. I'm Josh Pollard, and this is the show that puts you in control of your favorite movies, music, shows, and games. Have an interesting slate of topics for you this week, but unfortunately only one host. Richard and I could not make our schedules work together this week, so you get another episode with just me. But again, some interesting topics: video subscription, streaming service, streaming subscription prices. You know what they're doing. They're going up. But interesting news out of Spotify and some things that they're doing to make reading, whether that's physical books or audiobooks, an even easier process for you. And then some bad news on the gaming front, as AI is now causing hardware products like the Steam Machine and even next generation GPUs to get delayed. So we'll dig into all of that as we get into the show here. If you would like to send some feedback for a future episode, you can do that. Our email address is entertainment20@thedigitalmediazone.com. And all the rest of our contact information will be at the end of the show and over on our website, www.thedigitalmediazone.com. So let's get into the news and start, as we always do, with some video stories. Just one, and it's a common one. It's one that we keep having to report. It seems like weekly. This time it's Crunchyroll. If you're an anime fan, you definitely know what Crunchyroll is. They are pretty much the number one video streaming service for anime content. And we haven't talked about them that much because, surprisingly, they have not been increasing their subscription prices at nearly as much as what it seems like everybody else is. But unfortunately, the time has come for Crunchyroll to do just that. They're making it easy on us, at the very least. They're making it easy on those of us who report in this news, in that all tiers are just seeing the same increase across the board. All three of their tiers are going up by $2 a month. So the fan tier is now $10 a month. The mega fan tier is $14 a month. And the ultimate fan tier is now going to be $18 a month. Fortunately, there are a couple of pieces of, silver lining, if you want to call it that. The fan tier, that lowest tier, is now getting a feature that you only previously got if you subscribe to two of the higher tiers, and that is offline viewing. If you are a fan tier subscriber, you will be able to download videos for offline viewing on one device now. So that's a nice thing to see. And then also, they're doing a limited time promotion. If you would like to lock in a year of Crunchyroll at a discounted price, well, you can get the annual fan plan, so that's that bottom level tier, for only $67 a month. So that's a pretty steep discount, considering it's going up to $10 a month. So that's almost half off. So pretty good deal if you're considering sticking with Crunchyroll for the next year and saving yourself a whole bunch of money in the process. So let's jump into what's going on in audiobooks. Spotify doing some interesting things here. So first off, the new functionality they're offering. It is called Page Match. And the idea is maybe you like to read books the old-fashioned way, whether that's a physical book or maybe even an ebook, and you like listening to audiobooks. And maybe you like doing that for the same book at the same time. Maybe you listen to an audiobook while you're cleaning the kitchen, and then once your chores are done for the evening, you like to continue reading that book curled up on the couch or something like that. And it's kind of a pain to try and find where you are. And maybe you've solved this problem for yourself by just reading to the end of the chapter, and it's easier to find your place there. But they've got a new feature called Page Match coming out very soon that will make this even easier for you. So the way that it works is inside of the Spotify app, you will have two features, one called Scan to Listen and one called Scan to Read. And in that, you will use your phone's camera to scan the page of the book. And again, this works for physical books or for ebooks, and it will quickly identify where you are in the book by identifying the words on the page that it's seeing through your camera, and then automatically jump to that spot in the audiobook. Now that's pretty great, but it also works the other direction. But this gets a little bit more interesting of how they do this. I wondered at first, like, will they just tell you like, oh, well, that's page 47, but how does that work when it's got to consider between, the soft cover and the hardcover version? Those would be different page numbers. And then when you throw in ebooks, that adds yet another wrinkle. So instead, they go back to using your camera app. You scan in the book and it tells you need to flip forward or flip back. And it gives you a rough idea of how far forward or back you need to go. And then it'll eventually find what page you should be on. And it'll even highlight in the viewfinder what sentences you're on. So that's a pretty cool feature that I think I could see a lot of people using. I'm primarily an audiobook person, but occasionally I will switch to a physical or an ebook, because for some types of content, I feel like I'm able to remember it better, or maybe I want to pause and take notes. And that's a heck of a lot easier to do if you can see the content of the book instead of just listening and having to rewind and take some notes and then rewind again and take some more notes. So lots of potential use cases here for, whether you're listening to fiction or nonfiction. So this functionality, it's rolling out around the end of February, and it should work for most English language books that are in their massive library. You would probably assume that this requires you to have a Spotify Premium or Audiobook Plus subscription. And that's sort of true, but not entirely, because if you are a Spotify free tier customer, you can still purchase audiobooks directly through Spotify. So even if you're on the free tier, as long as you're listening to books somehow through Spotify, whether that's through the subscription or by purchasing books directly, this functionality is going to work. And I'm excited to try this out eventually once this launches. Spotify's not done there with their announcements related to books. And this one is maybe a little bit more surprising than even that last feature, because the other part of the story is that Spotify is partnering with bookshop.org for you to be able to use the Spotify app to buy physical books. So if you are like me, and under certain circumstances, having that physical book is really handy to you, well, you're going to be able to purchase the physical books right through the Spotify app. And what I love about this is that they're not partnering with Amazon or Barnes & Noble. They're partnering with bookshop.org. Bookshop.org is a really great site where they partner with independent bookshops. So when you buy things through bookshop.org, you select an independent bookshop that you would like to be the recipient of the money that you're spending. And it's a little bit more complicated than I'm making it out to be here, but if you're buying books, whether physical or ebooks, because we announced about a year ago, it was last January, that bookshop.org started selling ebooks too. You should check this out. There are lots of reasons that people are trying to move away from some of the bigger vendors out there like Amazon, and bookshop.org is a great place to go and check out if you're looking for purchasing books in a way that's going to help independent booksellers. So now you can do that right through Spotify, or, you can just, of course, go to the bookshop.org website on your own. But Spotify is making it even easier for you to go and purchase physical copies of the books that you are wanting to listen to or read with your eyeballs. Okay, so let's jump into our gaming news, and it's all bad news here. I hope you got your emotions lifted listening to all of that great news from Spotify, because in the gaming front, yikes, things are not looking good. and it's basically all AI's fault. I'm sure that's a surprise. So let's start with Valve. Back last fall, Valve kind of made a pretty big announcement when they announced the Steam Machine and a new Steam Frame VR headset and their new Steam controller. And they targeted early 2026 for launching all of these devices. But they specifically said with the Steam Machine, we're going to hold off on even giving you pricing information on this product because, well, at the time, it was just memory. The cost of RAM was starting to skyrocket. And since then, the price of SSD storage has also started to increase pretty dramatically. And so now, unfortunately, Valve had to come out and say, yeah, we wanted this to be early 2026, but with the cost and to their words, the cost of these components has rapidly increased since November of 2025. They're not ready to announce a price or ship these things yet. So now they're saying first half of 2026. And I think at some point, they're just going to kind of have to bite the bullet and release these things, right? Like, even if the cost of RAM and storage doesn't start to level out, they're going to have to ship these because in theory, they've already produced a bunch of them and they're not making any money off of them as they sit in a warehouse somewhere. So the business aspect of this is going to become very interesting to watch over the next couple of months. You know, in theory, we could be waiting until the end of June for these devices to ship, but hopefully we don't have to, because I'm really curious to see where the price lands on these, and even more curious to see how does the Steam Machine perform compared to other devices that are out there, especially the consoles that are already out there. So maybe one last weird thing about this. Okay, so the Steam Machine and the Steam Frame VR headset, these are computers. They have RAM. They have storage in them. I expect them and understand why those are delayed. But what about the controller? Like, there isn't an SSD in the controller, right? It's probably not DDR5 RAM in the controller. So why is that delayed? Is it just because they don't really want to launch that until the other two machines are released? Come on, throw us a bone and get some of these off of your warehouse shelves and just start recouping some money off of these devices. So maybe we'll see that new Steam controller sooner than the Steam Machine and the Steam Frame VR headset. Okay, so that was maybe not much of a surprise that was going to happen. This other one, though, a couple of months ago, I think you would have been surprised to hear this story, but the writing has kind of been on the wall, at least since we were at CES in early January. See, NVIDIA always has a huge press conference at CES. In fact, they've been the keynote speaker for a few years. I think AMD or maybe it was LG were this year. But this year, they didn't do what they normally do. Normally, at CES, they're announcing something new with their GPUs. You know, whether it's a brand new generation like a couple of years ago when they launched the RTX 50 series GPUs, what we kind of expected based on previous patterns is that this year they would have announced the next update. Not necessarily the 60 series, but probably that incremental improvement, which would have probably been called like the supers. So like the RTX 5080 super type cards. They've done that a lot in the previous generations. And now NVIDIA has officially announced, yeah, we're not doing that at all this year for the entire year. Check in my calendar. It is February 5th. There's a whole lot of 2026 left. And NVIDIA is saying, yeah, we're not doing this. We're not releasing updated GPUs for the entire calendar year of 2026. And why? Well, of course, the answer is AI, but it gets a little bit more interesting as you dig into the nuances of this. So we all or at least us gamers, have always looked at NVIDIA as, I mean, sure, they have other businesses and stuff, but they're around because of GPUs, right? They make gaming GPUs, or, for a while there, they were really in vogue for crypto miners and stuff like that, and they still are. But it's GPUs, man. And we want those for our gaming PCs. Well, if you look at their financials, if you look at since 2022, NVIDIA's total revenue share from gaming products has dropped from, back in 2022, 35% of their revenue was from gaming products. Last year, it was only 8%. So there's just not as much of a reason for NVIDIA to be focusing on those GPUs. And then you might think, well, okay, but what about their profit margins? If they're super profitable, they should still be pushing a bunch of these out, right? And they are. They get a 40% profit margin on their GPUs, which is pretty great. Like, that's Apple levels of profit margins for hardware, but it doesn't even come close to their AI products. They're getting a 65% profit margin on many of their AI products. So why? Why even focus the efforts on a next generation of GPU technology if that's not where the money is right now? So it's hard to blame them, even though that's what we want. So bad news from NVIDIA, bad news from Steam. The gaming industry is just a mess this year. And I mean, I don't want to be a broken record on this podcast every episode, but man, if you were thinking of getting a gaming console or a gaming PC, I mean, frankly, at this point, if you were thinking of getting a gaming PC, it's probably too late. You're going to be paying so much money for a gaming PC. And if you're thinking about a console, maybe get one soon, because they have to go through another price increase this year. I would be shocked if we make it to the end of 2026 without seeing console prices from all three of the major players, Sony, Xbox, and Nintendo. I expect all of them to increase their prices this year, because this RAM shortage, this isn't something that they can just easily fix. You can't just, in a month, go and build a new RAM factory. And same with SSDs. It just doesn't work that way. It takes months and months and months to be able to scale up production. And even more so when the type of production that these companies want to do is not for the chips that we need in our gaming PCs and our regular PCs. And sorry to be the bearer of bad news, folks, but this is going to impact other things too. If you're thinking of getting a brand new phone this year, expect to see those prices go up too, because your phone has memory in it. Your phone has storage in it. And all of that is going to continue to increase, or at least, like, at the best case, might start to level off. But I don't see prices of any of these things decreasing anytime soon. Probably not in this calendar year at all. So if you're thinking about big new tech purchases, maybe you want to do that sooner rather than later. Okay, well, that's it for our news. Let's get into what's going on in my entertainment center. For a few weeks, I've been talking about a project I've been working on to rebuild a new Plex and Channels server out of an old PC that I threw Linux on, but I had been having a lot of stability issues. And so I spent a lot of time with Gemini AI, trying to track down what these issues, because I figured at this point it might be multiples, what those issues might be. And I got real close to thinking this machine is just toast. There's something wrong with the motherboard. And I think there might still be something wrong with the motherboard, but Gemini was able to give me enough settings to change that it is now finally running stably. I did also have to replace the power supply in it, and I had to replace the CMOS battery. I figured those would last a lot more than 10-ish years, but I don't know, 10 years for a $2 battery. It's probably fine. So, so it's running again. I think it's been running nonstop without issues for over a week at this point. So I feel pretty satisfied that it's going to continue to run well for me. And now I'm getting to play with other services running on top of it and having a blast doing it. So glad to see all of that running again, and we'll see what I want to do now that I have both Plex and Channels running again. Do I give Plex DVR another try? Because Channels is really good. We'll see. All right, on the gaming front, it's mostly the same. I've played a little bit of NHL, played a little bit of Helldivers 2 with my friends, but maybe more importantly, I finished 1000X Resist. I liked the ending. Did they absolutely explain everything? Not necessarily. You probably have to piece some of the story together on your own. There were some choices near the end of the game that impact how the game ends for you. Fortunately, Joe and I made different decisions, so we were able to talk through both of those. But of course, we also just went out and found YouTube videos for the other potential endings, because there's a few. I'm not going to tell you how many, but there are more than 2 potential endings for this game. And at about 11-ish hours of time to play it, if you're interested in an interesting sci-fi-ish story, this is a good one. And it's a fun one. And it's on Game Pass on Xbox and PC. It's got Xbox Play Anywhere if you want to be bouncing between your console and your PC like I do. It's a fun game. So check out 1000X Resist if that sounds interesting to you. In terms of movies, I haven't really sat down and watched anything new, although having that Plex server running again, I did find myself watching the movie Hackers for longer than I really should have, just because it sounded fun and I needed something to test. That movie is so ridiculous. We finished Copenhagen Test. Again, I liked it. I wouldn't say I loved it, but it was good. The Pit continues to be amazing. Absolutely loving the show. I'm still working my way through the 2026 version of the Dakar Rally. All of that is on Peacock if you're interested in some crazy rally racing across the Saudi Arabian desert. And on Amazon Prime, I'm still working my way through Fallout Season 2. I know that season is done now. I think I was watching episode 5 while I was running this morning, so I'm getting close to the end of that. It's great. They continue to do a really good job with that show. On books, I think I mentioned last week that I had started the book 1 Second After. I'm maybe 40% of the way through that book now. I do like it. I will say, it's a good story. It's a fun and interesting story. The type of story that I get into, where it's sort of, I don't know, is it post-apocalyptic? Maybe. But it's, bad situation and people trying to figure out how to get around it. And there's a lot of really smart people making smart decisions on how to handle this emergency situation. And it's well written. It's engaging. I like that. I'll throw out a couple of caveats. This book takes place in the South. It takes place in North Carolina. There are some people in this book who maybe not the most politically correct characters. So if that's going to bother you, you're probably not going to like that. And there's, there is the author. I think the author's political views are probably fairly clear by who does the foreword to this book. Newt Gingrich did the foreword to this book. And you can kind of tell that it comes from probably someone who leans a little bit more to the right. But I don't find this book to be incredibly political, no more so than you would expect of any emergency sort of situation where the government does have a role to play. So I don't think any of this is extreme by any stretch of the imagination, but it's probably something worth knowing as you might want to dig into this book. So that again was called 1 Second After. All right, well, that's going to do it. So if you'd like to get a hold of us, we are on social media. I'm at Josh Pollard on Twitter, I guess it's X, and Blue Sky. I'd prefer if you reach out to me on Blue Sky than X. Richard is Richard Gunther on Mastodon and richardgunther.com on Blue Sky. And of course, if you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe. If you're not watching this on YouTube, can you take 30 seconds and go to YouTube and like and subscribe. That would help us out a lot. But that is going to do it for episode 702. I'm Josh Pollard. Thanks for listening to Entertainment 2.0. Adios.